Well, amid massive face-off with Russia, Ukraine Security Council has recommended a state of emergency across the country, and if approved by parliament, the state of emergency will last for 30 days. Ukrainian government, in the meanwhile, has also urged citizens living in Russia to leave immediately. We'll come to that in a bit. Let's now also focus on the issue that directly impacts India. It's the issue with regards to international oil prices that has surged close to $100 a barrel on Tuesday after Russian President Vladimir Putin sent troops into Ukraine. But petrol and diesel prices in India are on a freeze. They are expected to rise. As industry experts say, that will happen once the assembly elections in states like UP end. So amid fears of supplies being disrupted because of Russian aggression, the Brent crude oil price has now risen to $98, like I said on Tuesday morning. This has created fresh concerns on what will its impact be here in India. Retail pump rates in India, as we all know, are currently aligned to a price of $82 to 83 per barrel, which is lower than the current price, which means that the price revision is due, which is why industry experts believe that it is likely to go up after the elections. Let me introduce, joining us here on the program is Mr. Santosh Mehrotra, renowned economist, and also Shebonti Ray Dadwal, consultant, MP IDSA, who's an energy expert and also an expert on diplomacy. Very warm welcome to the two of you. If I can come to you first, Mr. Mehrotra, to what extent do you agree with this argument, with this assessment, that this is some sort of a lull before the storm? The fuel price hike is impending. It is due to happen, and it will hit us once the elections are over, and that can also be again followed by further inflation.
That goes without saying. I've been expecting, in fact, this to happen from the beginning. In fact, what I was expecting was that before the election started, the government might have reduced prices even further by cutting its own taxes. But it hasn't done that, and there's no question that it will increase the price, definitely by raising taxes. And it'll find an excuse in the rising international oil prices. I think the more direct effect that India might face is the fact that about half of our LNG, meaning liquefied natural gas, is imported from Ukraine, and those supplies might be impacted if the crisis actually escalates.
Okay.
But it may well be that both Russia on the one hand and the US on the other, and US and NATO on the other, may pull back. But the problem, unfortunately, is that the US position has been extremely aggressive in Eastern Europe. The foundational reason for the crisis is essentially the fact that the US established an air base, a military base in Poland. Now, please remember that Poland was part of the Eastern Bloc of the Soviet Union. Now, it's not just become a part of NATO. The US has established a base there. Now, the Ukraine is thinking of joining NATO, and obviously the Russians are not happy because Ukraine is a Russian-speaking country which borders Western Europe, but at the same time borders Russia. So yes, that's not going to go down very well. So in a sense, NATO and the West asked for this face-off.
Yes, and yes, it is going to severely impact oil supplies, and that is why these concerns are arising. Coming to you, Shebonti Dadwal, if I can just quote some figures that I have here with regards to India's imports. Now, India apparently imported 43,400 barrels per day of oil from Russia in 2021, which is 1% of the overall imports. Coal imports from Russia, 1.8 million tons in 2021, again 1.3% of total coal imports. India buys, like Mr. Mehrotra was mentioning, 2.5 million tons of LNG, liquid natural gas, a year from Gazprom of Russia. Now, why is there such a paranoia when our dependence on Russia for these items is pretty small?
Well, this is because in the case of, let's start with oil. Oil is a global market. It doesn't matter where the supplies are going to be affected.
Okay.
It is the price of oil or for any reason, if there is a supply shortage somewhere, it's going to go down as like a domino effect on the entire oil industry. So it really doesn't matter where the shortage is going to be coming from, or if there's a crisis anywhere. It's also a psychological thing. It being a global market, the prices are going to reflect on every oil market. So that's the reason oil prices are going to go up. Now let's look at gas. Gas is not yet, it's still still a regional market, but the price of gas is linked to the price of oil. So if the price of oil is going to go up, the price of gas is also going to go up simultaneously. In terms of coal, these are independent markets. It's not really a world market, it's more a bilateral kind of thing. So oil and gas, yes, will be impacted if there is a crisis anywhere in the oil market, anywhere in the world. Okay. And because with oil, gas too will be affected.
Okay, that gives us a lot of clarity on why India should be worried. But in the overall picture, Mr. Mehrotra, it seems, at the moment, like we've been saying, supplies at the moment is not the biggest worry. It is the price rise that could happen post, any announcement of a hike in domestic fuel prices. What are the repercussions that you foresee from there on?
Further setback to an incipient recovery, and further reduction in incomes, effective incomes of those who have already been impacted extremely adversely at the bottom of the pyramid in India. We know that poverty has increased. India is one of the biggest contributors to the absolute increase in the absolute number of world poor post-COVID. And in any case, prices were rising in India for food, we all know, and inflation in FY22 has been 8%. It may be down now to about 5.99%, but it has been 8%. So if the government decides, in its great wisdom, as the wisdom has already been shown in the last year, to increase taxes on petrol immediately after the 7th of March, we will see more impoverishment and more reduction in aggregate demand, and therefore the downward pressure on consumption is going to impact economic recovery. We know that in the in FY22, the per capita consumption was already lower by 5% compared to FY21.
Yes. Okay. In fact, Ms. Abanti, if I can come to you on that point as well about in the overall picture, how do you see the economy getting a hit because of these developments in the international scenario? You pointed out about oil and gas, the commodity market, the overall inflation, growth. These are important parameters for an economy like ours. What about jobs? How do you see all of that getting impacted?
Everything, the linkage between energy and every other aspect of life as we know it is very, very, it's clear. So, for instance, transportation, even now, even though we're trying to move away from, into renewables, etc., the fact of the matter is that we are still immensely dependent on oil for transportation, and also not so much in the power sector. But gas, of course, is not used too much in gas. But when you look at oil, diesel is used for transporting everything, in the country. So if the price of diesel is going to go up, it is added to the price of every commodity. So that in that case, it's like I said, it's a cascading effect. It's going to be impacting on every aspect of our lives because of the price rise in oil, which is inevitable. It is going to happen. It's just a matter of March the 10th. Let's wait till March 10th. And after that, you're going to see a massive rise, I think, in per litre petrol and diesel prices. So, and it's going to have an impact on every aspect of our life because of this. The other thing I want to mention is Russia is not just an energy giant. It is also a metal giant. So you will have, for instance, palladium, which is used in cell phones. Russia is the largest producer of palladium. So you're going to see an across the board problem in a lot of metals across all over the world, and of course is going to impact India as well.
Yes. Yes, in terms of how the supply chain can get disrupted, it will, of course, create a lot of perhaps detours, and that will take time to settle down with the recent developments that we have seen. Thank you so much, Shabonti Ray Dadwal and Professor Santosh Mehrotra, for joining us.